Hi guys, let's talk a little bit about portraits. Our objectives are identify and describe the importance of portraiture and the various styles of portraiture in the history of photography. Then demonstrate expressive and technical skills in creating a series of portraits using lighting, posing, and creative techniques. Our words worth knowing is portrait. A portrait is an artistic representation like a painting, photograph, or sculpture that captures the likeness, personality, and mood of a person or group, often focusing on the face and expression. So for our portrait series, it is more than just a face. You're not just taking a picture of someone's face. It's not just a record of what someone looks like. It's a curated image. It's a story, and it's a story and vision of a person that you are creating. So we are seeing this person through your eyes. So why do we even create portraits? I tried to boil it down to a few overall themes that I've found. So one is immortality. Everyone wants to live forever. If you have an iconic portrait of yourself, even long after you're gone, you will have this living document of yourself. So I can think about over on my shelf over there, I have these portraits of my grandparents. I have portraits of my great-grandparents. So now these people will live forever. Second is status, showing wealth, power, success, identity. You can be showing this is who I am or who I want you to think I am, just capturing your likeness and personality. So when you do a selfie and you put that filter on there, you're trying to show people who you want to be or how you want them to see you. So there's also some identity that you're curating there. Fourth is narrative. So telling stories, documenting history. So having those photos of your family, your friends. So you're documenting your growth. Artistic exploration. So pushing boundaries, experimenting visually, and trying to communicate ideas just beyond realism, just a portrait of yourself. So trying to also say something with your art. So these are just a couple themes. There's plenty more. But we need to talk a little bit about the daguerreotype. So the daguerreotype was created in 1839 by Louis Daguerre. Prior to this, when people figured out how to use photosensitive materials, light-sensitive materials, the images would fade. Daguerre figured out a way to keep them from fading. And he used a copper plate with like silver on the top, and he figured out how to use what's called fixer, so fix the image on the plate. This was the first commercially successful process. This is what made photography affordable to the middle class. So prior to this, you had to come in with a portrait painter hired to paint yourself as an image. Only wealthy people could afford that. So this created widespread portrait studios and shifted portraiture from exclusive art for the wealthy to a widespread practice. So now everybody can afford to get their picture taken. So it immortalized everyday individuals and families for the first time. So now you could have a picture of your loved one that went off into the Civil War. So you find lots of images like that. They're really incredible if you could see one in person. And then just as an aside note, why did old people or people in old photos never smile? Hopefully you didn't read ahead. But it's because people had to sit for 5 to 10 minutes. So when you used a daguerreotype camera, they put the plate in, thing over your head, open the shutter. The shutter had to be open for 5 to 10 minutes, exposing that plate for it to come out correctly. So you had to sit like for 5 to 10 minutes. So that's why there's nobody smiling. So that exposure time was so long. So if you find photos of like this of children, sometimes they'll be a little blurry, or even dogs, which is my favorite. They'll be blurry because they couldn't sit still for that long. All right, so let's look at some example portrait styles. Again, these are ones that I kind of just categorized. They overlap. There's not just like one style, but I tried to like branch them out as different types so you can kind of have an idea of what type you like. So one is just a traditional studio portrait. So it looks classic, formal, focused. Usually your subject is looking at the camera. You have a plain background. You might have a studio set up, classic lighting, and posing. So you're directing the pose. So your overall goal with a studio portrait, you're capturing the facial expression, the likeness of the subject. You're trying to represent the subject as who they are. So these two examples on the left are really good examples of studio portraits. The one on the top by Sado Kaida This is one that was taken in Africa during a time where this culture was starting to get more wealth, so their middle class got bigger, and now, just like in the 1850s, 1830s, they were able to have these portraits made of themselves. And he set up a little studio at his home. The one at the bottom is Richard Avedon, very, very famous portrait photographer, but you can see in a studio. This one's a little bit not quite traditional with the expression, but still, it's posed. They're sitting in a studio for their image. So, like I said before, like family photos, posed photos, wedding photos, anything that's kind of planned and set up and you pose people, I would call a traditional studio portrait. Next is an environmental portrait. So it looks like storytelling, there's context, it's informative. So the subject is photographed in their natural environment. So Yusuf Karsh has Georgia O'Keeffe, who's a very famous painter, in her home in New Mexico, has the skull because she painted a lot of skulls. So the background is informing you is just as important as the person. So it's giving me this overall narrative about who that person is. And then Tina Barney below, it's this woman in her house. You can see she even has a portrait painted of herself in her house. So you're trying to capture who the person is and tell a story about who they are by using the background as well as taking their photo. So a doctor in a hospital, a musician in their studio, a writer in their office. So you're giving the person some context with the background. And then candid documentary. So you're out about in the world taking photos, observing what you see. So the subject is natural, not directed. They're often unaware of the camera while the photographer is a fly on the wall. So you're looking at raw emotions, expressions, interactions. It's spontaneous. So you want to tell a story about people, events, or cultures through authentic moments and not staged scenes. Although once you get into some documentaries, some of them might be a little more staged and then some that are not. So this one by Gordon Parks, for example, very famous photo. I actually gotten to see it in person of the two people standing next to that entrance. So making a commentary on the social climate at the time. And then so a photojournalist documenting a rally, street photographer capturing everyday life in the city. Then we have glamour and fashion. So it looks like beauty, allure, style, exotic locations and backdrops. So just showcasing fashion, style trends, usually for magazines, social media. So you're combining really technical skills with creative vision, maybe costumes, makeup, hair. So high fashion magazine work, celebrity portraits, stylized, emphasis on makeup, hair, styling. So you can see that beautiful photo of Beyonce by Tyler Mitchell, and then the photograph by Irving Penn. So really focusing on style and like an aesthetic. And then last, creative conceptual fine art. This is my personal favorite. So very abstract work. Maybe you're doing double exposures, collaging things together. You're doing things by hand with the photographs. It's very idea concept driven. So you're using the camera as a tool to visualize your idea. You're not just trying to capture a likeness. You're trying to be symbolic, explore deeper themes in your work. So a portrait series that incorporates text and written word, as example below down there by Dwayne Michaels. He actually wrote on the frames of his work. Like he would write these little narratives, these little stories. Multiple layers of imagery. Brooke Shaden up at the top. She would do all these setups in her home and then combine all these images together. There's lots of videos she has that are pretty incredible. So you're trying to give away ideas, social commentary, using symbolism. So you're using portrait as a way to convey something. So remember, as we're shooting portraits, the artist is the one who has control. It's never objective. Even if you're doing a traditional studio portrait, it is never objective. The lighting you use can change the mood. The angles can change your power dynamic, whether you're shooting from above or below. Your settings, your props can change how the person feels about the story you're trying to tell. And then your editing can change the reality of what the image is. And then last, just some student examples over the years. These are a little bit older, but all of these have been taken at various points. So what we're going to be doing in classes, we're going to be doing a series of different styles of portraits. And I hope these give you a little bit of ideas. and I can't wait to see what you guys do in class. Good job.